So today we have Jessica, or Jess.
Yeah,
Jess.
calls me Jessica.
Okay, Jess from JRD Art Shop, and I'm gonna let you introduce yourself.
Okay, yeah.
Start talking.
Hi guys, my name's Jess. I live in Merced, so just about an hour south. I have an amazing husband named Jesse, so we met and we're like, we have the same name, and we both kind of knew, not because of that, but it was like this instant, like I know that you're the person. So we've been married for 12 years. We have two awesome kids, a 6-year-old Zoe and 3-year-old Wes. So Wes and Finn are kind of they're super close in age. And let's see where to begin. I was thinking, I'm like, I'm gonna start with college because I feel like there's just the story. If there's anything I have gleaned from just looking back and even thinking about today, like I think for everybody, it's so powerful when you just actually sit down and kind of like do a little tracking of like what's happened over the years, because you find things pieced together that if you were to rewind in that moment, you would have never known this thing's gonna be there. But then it's there and you kind of piece it together, and there's so much like, I feel like confidence that can come in that place, because you're like, okay, whatever I'm in the middle of right now, even if I don't understand it, I can look back far enough and see how things have kind of woven together. So I did a year of community college in Merced, and then I moved down south and went to Azusa Pacific for a year. I was undeclared both years, APU. Undeclared both years, and very much like I was always interested in like color and creativity. Like anytime I'd see a pack of markers or like just paint, you know, going to the paint store and just seeing all the swatches, like that always just like, there's something in me, you know, that got excited. But also the idea of, oh, you can't get a job with art, I feel like was kind of like just there too. Like I'd heard that so many times. So undeclared, thought about going into psychology. I ended up going to a guidance counselor the summer after my first year at APU, so my second year of college. And I remember her looking at me and I was like explaining what I was interested in, and like, I'm just like very all over the place. And she was like, she didn't say like, are you sure you're at the right school? She just recommended, like, she's like, have you looked into the Fashion Institute in LA? Like they have all these creative programs. And so it wasn't even on my radar, but I ended up, went home for the summer. My mom and my sister and me drove all the way down to LA, like on a super quick trip, toured the school, and I walked by and saw all these window displays, and I was just like, oh my goodness, like I didn't even know this world existed. At that point, I didn't even know anthropology existed, which is where I would spend the first like 7 years of my creative career. But over that summer, I applied, got accepted, and switched schools, and I ended up graduating there with visual communications, which kind of like dabbled in every kind of creative expression. So I feel like I walked away feeling like, okay, I could continue going in this direction or that direction or that direction. But what really tipped the scale on what I stepped into was an internship at Anthropology. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with the retail store, how there's like art installations, it's a whole thing. I went in, so one of my teachers was like, she used to be a manager there, she's like, you should look into doing an internship. So I remember walking in and seeing the store for the first time and seeing these art installations and like just a whole, I didn't even realize that really existed, and I was like, this is amazing. So I was hoping to get the internship. I got a call a few weeks later, I got it. So I ended up, you know, just doing that free work thing for the last quarter of school, and I knew that display coordinator, that was like the job I wanted to do. But I didn't feel equipped. Pretty much that's the theme I feel like throughout my whole journey is like, I don't feel like I'm quite ready for that, and then I stepped into it. So I waited, I became a sales associate, I waited for a position to open up. The first one I applied to, I did not get, but I kept working, I stayed there, and then I ended up getting to be like a interim display coordinator, because ours had to go away for like a month. So I got to step in and do that job for a chunk of time. And that's when I really was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. So kept doing that, did the sales thing, which I didn't really like doing, but I knew I was waiting for something. And then I ended up applying for the Palm Desert display position, and I got it, which was super exciting. And I ended up moving there. I lived with my grandparents, and then we got married that summer. So it was like uncomfortable because, you know, it's like a new town, new job, graduated, not living close to friends and family except for, you know, my grandparents, which was a really cool season with them. But just to kind of like wrap up that whole season of work with them. I got to work like every position in that company that's creative. So like intern, merchandiser, display coordinator, and then my last year, which was in Fresno, I moved back home to be close to family. And the last job was visual manager, which if you would have told me, I remember being in the office with my visual manager when I was a display coordinator and being like, oh, I would never want your job. Like, that's not something that, you know, I would ever be interested in. And then I find myself in this position of like, oh my goodness, like this, and still feeling this like confidence, like I'm gonna do it because it's like that kind of like go-getter, like I'm gonna, you know, work hard at this no matter what. If you like stick with that, it's beautiful to see what God does with it because I look back and I'm like, how did all of this happen? Even now I'm like, how? And it wasn't me. It's just doors that got opened that I'm like, chose to say yes to walk through. Because if you look, I'm sure all of you guys, you can look back at a time where you could have said no, you could have not stepped in that direction, and then if you didn't step in that direction, you wouldn't have the experience and growth and learning that you got by just stepping out and doing it. And so yeah, that's kind of the story with Anthropology. And then I got pregnant with our firstborn and knew that I wanted to stay home and it would be possible. So prior to even getting pregnant, me and my mom would paint together. If I had like a personal day from work, I'd go over, we paint. And still hadn't really figured out what my style was with painting. But I remember there was one day in my mom's studio that I had like a big canvas and I just threw paint on it and like started working with a palette knife, and there was this beautiful moment with like texture and color, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's like something here. And if I look at that painting, I'm like, but in the moment I'm like, okay, there was something that kind of was stirring in me with color and texture. So then I ended up staying home with Zoe. At that point, I think I started selling work online because I started sharing on Instagram, and people were like, oh, you should start selling your work. And it was like one here, one there. It wasn't this like major thing, but it was more of the step of just like putting yourself out there. And Zoe, so I'm home with her, painting during nap time just for fun, kind of putting things in my shop, put a website together. And then she had just turned a year old. It was that summer that a photographer asked me, could you ever paint this, but on like a much larger scale, like for a backdrop? And I had never heard of like painted backdrops. It hadn't really been like a thing that I didn't realize there was a market for that. But I remembered when she asked me, oh, at Anthropology we used to cover art walls with canvas and paint them for like different like seasonal changes in displays and stuff. And so I knew the materials to use, and I was just like, yeah, and I figured it out. And it wasn't a masterpiece really by any means. It was like super simple. Painted it in my driveway on a tarp, and that led into what I'm doing now, which is a backdrop and styling mat business. And it's been 5 years, and it's just been a continuous growth, learning process of just kind of troubleshooting and figuring out how to ship things and all of that behind the scenes stuff that comes with it, you know? But I today wanted to like lean into the fear thing because it's been on my heart a lot. And when I look at my story and even now in the season that I'm in, there's just a lens we can look at situations with that change everything for us. And if we look at like, even look back at things, like maybe something didn't go as planned, but if we're looking at it through a lens of what did I learn through that? How did I grow through that? What do I know now that I didn't know that I wouldn't have known if I didn't do that, versus, oh my gosh, what if that happens again? Or what if this, what if that? I just feel like life is too short for that kind of, like for fear to creep in like that. But I think it's really powerful when we actually slow down and like kind of trace things back a little bit, like, wait, why am I, and I'm not giving any like psychological advice because that's not me, but I think there's a principle to like slow down and really like take your thoughts captive. Okay, why am I second guessing this thing? Why am I feeling like that was such a strong thing on my heart? Why did that fade? Or, oh, I tried that thing and it didn't go as planned. Did I back down because I'm afraid that is fear creeping in? So I wrote a few notes specifically about this because I didn't want to forget certain things. The first one was, okay, why is it important not to fear? I know everybody's coming from different places. I'm not necessarily talking to just artists, like everybody's in different fields of work, but just in general, when fear comes in, it's crippling. It slows us down. It like makes us start looking at other things with fear, and it just sucks. I want us to identify it. So if there's anything that we could walk away with today, it would be, okay, asking ourselves questions of like, am I making decisions from a place of fear, or am I making them from just a place of, it's gonna be okay, I'm gonna learn, I'm gonna grow, it's gonna work out, and setting that example for other people, because I think that's a big thing. Half the time, you guys probably don't even realize how many people you have impacted by simply living your life. Like, we think, oh no, I need to like write this thing down so people see it. It's like the way you are going about your days, the way you talk about situations, the way you carry yourself, like that speaks more than anything. Like, this is great and all of this, but the momentum of even us being like, oh wait, I totally started like bowing to fear right there. That's monumental for anybody to like recognize that. And then, because once you turn that on, one situation that popped into my head before coming today was, we got in a car accident. Me and the kids got in a car accident in, when was this? Early this year, like February or March. And everyone was okay. It was terrifying, and it just happened to be after I really felt such a breakthrough of just like fear falling off of me. Like, I felt so, we had church Sunday, and then God had just been stirring things in my heart, and I just felt so free. And then like I had shared about it on Wednesday with our Bible study, and then that night, boom, this crazy guy, high on cocaine, drunk, flies over. My husband was actually behind us, so he saw the whole thing happen and didn't realize we got hit, but we were all okay. I felt like I was gripping the steering wheel, and it felt like there were hands over my hands, and I knew I just had to like, I could see a car flipping behind me, like it was nuts. But I pull over, we're all okay. I'm looking at the kids like, God protected us, we're okay. And car's fixed, everything's fine. But then I noticed even the week after that, I'm like, I'm not gonna live in fear from this. Like, I'm not, because even getting back in the car, you can't get in a car accident and then get back in a car and not think like, what might happen, you know? Or parallel that with any other situation. If you've had something play out like you didn't expect, so it kind of fed your fear a little bit, like, oh, I kind of saw that happening and then it did. Don't like reject that, because that's just gonna continue slowing you down. You're gonna continue learning and growing. So with the car thing, I just it was just a monumental moment this year of being like, I'm not going to be fearful. And it's completely, like, it hasn't even been a thing for me. It'll pop into my head and be like, nope, yeah, I'm driving to Fresno, no, we're gonna be fine. So just dismissing it. So yeah, it's just really, it's burning on my heart right now. Cause I know we are in a time when there's things that are on all of your hearts. There's things you're in the middle of doing, and there's things you've thought about doing. Maybe things you've stepped into, but you're like, there's more here, but I didn't continue going there because I don't know what if it doesn't turn out like I think it's gonna turn out. It's not even just for us, it's also just like for the people around us. Like, it's so much bigger than us. Like, anytime I start feeling overwhelmed or fearful, if I forget about myself a little bit and I start thinking about like, oh, okay, there's a bigger picture here. There's like so much more to this than I can even see. And stepping into whatever those things are is just really powerful. So don't like downplay it. Like, oh no, it's not that big of a deal. It is, like, it is. And even if you do that thing and it's like it doesn't go exactly how you planned, you're still breathing, like, you know, like, it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be okay. And if anything, it allows other people to be like, oh, cool, okay, well, she's good. Like, that, she did that thing. And or maybe it's like wildly successful beyond what you even could comprehend. Like, but instead of trying to like get so caught up in the outcome, just be like obedient in the little, like, oh yeah, maybe talk to this person. Okay, yeah, say yes to this thing. And for me, that comes from a place of prayer and being in the Word of God. And I don't know where everyone's at with that, but like, that's where it's at for me. Like, I will feel kind of the chaos start, you know, you throw any kind of like dream you have going on, but then you've got kids in school, and you've got there's all these things that are like simultaneously happening in our life. And I do believe it's possible to continue stepping into things that are like uncomfortable, even with all these things still going on, because when you're headed in the right direction, it's gonna work out. Like it's gonna, like even today, this isn't something I prayed for opportunities to encourage women. So when stuff like this comes up, it's like I feel that the butterflies in my stomach of like, oh my goodness, what have I got myself into? And then I was painting this morning because I needed to do a backdrop this morning, and I instantly felt God tell me like, you prayed for this, I'm answering your prayer, and then I'm gonna show up. And I have felt so much joy and so much peace and so much just like, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be today. But I woke up with like a stomachache, you know, like there's just these things that are uncomfortable, but like when I look back on my life, I don't want to be like, oh, good thing I like, you know, really played it safe and I said no to those things so I wouldn't have to be uncomfortable for 20 minutes before, you know, I want to look back and be like, oh my goodness, how did that happen? How did that? And I can do that now for like 12 years and be like, how did that happen? Like, how did I, like my mom, I remember her dropping me off I got to do like store openings for Anthropology, which crazy, like would have never thought. Still felt so unqualified for. And then I would like be so nervous. She'd pick me up at like 4 a.m., drop me off, and I'd be like, what am I doing? And I would be there for like 10 days, and they'd be like 10 to 12 hour days, and just like the anxiety was real. But then I look back now and I'm like, I'm so glad I did that, because then Jesse would pick me up, you know, the evening I get back, and I would just be like you have that confidence of like, wow, I conquered that. Like, I just did that. That just happened. And then like throw childbirth in there, and there's all these other things where it's like, oh my goodness. Like you can look back and be like, so it's like keeping your eyes ahead and not getting too caught up on the past, but also look enough to remind yourself of like, dude, I'm good. I've done this. Like all these things have worked out just fine. You know? Yeah. You know, because I feel like this is probably like a messy. Yeah, like good for you. I want to talk to you. So yeah, that's kind of like the main thing is like looking through the lens of I'm learning something and I'm growing, not what if and a lot of it for me, to be honest with you guys, like this year especially, the fear of rejection and the fear of people and what people think has been like the biggest. I feel like it's been uncovered, like for me, I'm like, oh wow, I didn't realize I cared so much. I didn't realize I was so afraid of looking silly trying something. Like all of a sudden that was just like uncovered, and I'm dealing with it. So it's like identify it, and then there's going to be a process working through it. It's not like, oh, now I know what it is, I'm afraid of that. It's like, no, it's going to be a process like working through it. But once you identify it, because for those things for me, and now I feel like it's like, oh boom, that's showing up in that way. So yeah, we're learning and we're growing, and surrounding yourself with people that are like also going after things and reaching for more and are resilient and encouraging. And like if you have an idea, like who are you talking with about that idea? Because if you're going to somebody that's kind of like, oh, I don't know, like be wise about who you're even letting counsel you in your life. And because that can steer, if you already have a little bit of a fear and then you start talking with somebody that's already a little bit like, oh, that's probably not the person, because you could have the same little fear and talk to somebody that's like, you know, been there, done that, conquered some stuff, and they're like, oh girl, I had that too, you're gonna, it'll be fine. You know, it could be literally the catalyst could be like who you're talking to, who you're letting influence you, and it could be somebody that doesn't even know you're listening, but it's whoever's on your, you know, phone, your feed, whatever. And yeah, because we're in control of that. We're not victims to who, you know, I know there's, yeah. Especially like within social media, all that stuff, like we're not victims to social media. We choose what we're letting our eyes see and what we're not letting our eyes see. And we can control that. So if you notice like, oh wow, I was feeling fine, and then all of a sudden, what was that? Trace it back. Okay, maybe I don't need that, you know, that voice in my life right now. But yeah, you can't always control it either. So at the same time, it's like you just, you know, kind of quiet the noise. That's been my thing too, is like quiet the noise, and it actually gets a little louder, because then you realize all the thoughts that have been just like stirring around, but you've been busy, so they've kind of been suppressed. That's what I'm working through right now. I'm like, I quieted the noise all summer and kind of just got offline, and it was like the most mentally crazy summer. I feel like my kids would have never known, but I felt like I was kind of losing it. But it's just been a continual like, okay, all that stuff comes, but then you deal with it, and new things are growing, and it's gonna be good. But sometimes it takes like actually facing the stuff that comes up when you quiet everything, because we just live if we're not careful, we live the most like distracted, busy lives. And I just, if I'm busy with anything, if my life is full with anything, like I want to be intentional about what it's full with. I don't want to just, you know, I want to live, I've heard people say like live fully awake. It's like, that's how I want to live. I want to live aware of like, yeah, my week is full, but like I'm choosing what's in it and it's good stuff, and I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So yeah, I guess that's it.
One theme I feel like I'm hearing you say is, and I hear often, or even tell myself, is often in the uncomfortable is where we grow the most. We like being comfortable. Really, like I don't like getting uncomfortable. It's not fun. But I look back and yeah, definitely, you know, when I've got a lot of fear, anxiety, oh, this is not fun, but for some reason I'm being pushed to do this, I just gotta leap and do it. It's usually where you end up growing the most. And then very wise words on who are you talking to and allowing to speak into you, because that can quickly crush you or lift you up. So Kathy, you always say this, surround yourself by the 5 people, how does it go?
Jen, how does it go?
You tend to be like the 5
People that you
Oh, yeah,
spend the most
So
time
I
with.
just wanted to really think, do I want to share those qualities? You
Yeah.
know, sometimes you do, sometimes you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then another thing I'd love to add, I was on a call this week and the coach, she said, she's hearing, like just having this feeling that we are becoming a culture of loneliness, and because so much of our lives are spent online, and you know, our lives are so busy and so full that we don't have as much human connection and interaction as we actually need. So that really struck me. I was like, I think, you know, I don't know, I know I crave connection like this, and this is why I bring all these people together, but I didn't think about that as like the world as a whole, like how, you know, I know anxiety's on the rise and a lot of mental health, but loneliness is like a huge thing, and she spoke about that, and I just thought, you know, well then we have to be more intentional on not, you know, putting ourselves out there, building our community, picking our 5 people that we surround ourselves with in order to, you know, be the best version of what we want to be. So
Yeah.
so yeah, that's good. Anybody have any other thoughts or anything they want to add?
It was really good. I feel like I'm not alone now.
Oh, thank you.
You know, like I was like, wow, she's talking to me right now. Because like I almost didn't come because I've been struggling with anxiety. Oh gosh, like really bad.
And that comfort can actually be like a prison, because you could cripple yourself to where like you don't want to even leave your home or go out anywhere, because just even going to the grocery store or going here, like it was crazy as you were talking. I'm having like a panic attack over here, sitting here having a panic attack, and I'm listening to you, and I had to tell myself like, no one's thinking what you're thinking in your head right now. Like, that's the enemy. But you can get so comfortable hiding and just putting on this mask where you will get to a point where you just break. You go crazy to where you can't even handle like basic things. So it's actually what you think is helping, which is like a mask of comfort. It really isn't comfort. You're creating a prison for yourself, you know, and I'm in a place where I'm trying to like break out of that prison now and just do basic things to like not have the anxiety just take over my life. So it was really good.
Does anybody else like feel that just anxiety, like, yeah.
I was really struck, and I don't want to cry, but you brought me to tears, but in a way that, like, I wanted to hug you, because you're definitely not alone. Something I don't share often, but I feel compelled to, is that I'm a cancer survivor.
I am too.
And okay, well,
Yeah.
and I'm still in active treatment, so survivor, I don't know, it doesn't feel right sometimes to say, but So I'm in active therapy as well, and so it's years and years of trying to listen to that therapist and say that it is easier to stay on your couch. My husband's in a forest fire right now, so I'm home alone a lot.
Yeah.
So it's easier, it's comfortable to stay on your couch, and you get deeper and deeper, and find yourself not able to leave the house. And that's really, so I encourage you to either find a therapist that works for you, or a friend that you can call with no expectation, but that you have a lifeline.
Yeah.
And it's easier said than done, but I've become more and more accustomed to calling people and telling them you need help.
Yeah.
So
Because I feel like a lot of counselors, they just want to put you on medicine. And it's like, that's so not what I need. You know, I don't need to suppress. Like, you just need support, or someone
absolutely
to understand, and you not feel like crazy or alone all the time, you know? Because
Well, you're not alone, I'm here.
Yeah, thank
I definitely resonated with like your driving story, because in like the past year I finally had like a breakthrough, and it's been like over a month since I haven't had a panic attack driving. But a year ago, I went with my friend, my sister, up to Yosemite, and I had this like panic attack while we were driving, where I just saw everything blurry, and all I could focus on was like, we're gonna fall off on like, you know, over the mountains, and our car just rolling down, and I kept visualizing that, where it like made me just lose it, and she had to take over the wheel. But at the time, I was, especially being a coach, you know, it's like, I tell myself sometimes like, you're okay, just keep moving through, like keep pushing forward. And just ignoring that. The first step of like letting go of fear is like acknowledging the fear and figuring out like, where is this coming from? What is the root cause of it? And for me, I was just like, oh, it was that one event, right? Like driving to Yosemite, like that's what caused me to keep having panic attacks. So I just kept moving forward, but ignoring like what the actual cause was. And it was just having this like fear of the unknown, and not knowing if I could like handle certain situations in my life. And it wasn't until I like really took control of that, where I, you know, sought out help, and it really just came down to like 2-3 people. Like I didn't even share about it online except recently, where I really just leaned in on sharing like, I'm not okay, and being able to then like work on that and tackle the fear. And it has come down to like prayer, but also visualizing what I want the outcome to be, versus thinking about just like, oh, I'm gonna fall off a cliff, or, you know, because it even got worse, like even from Turlock to Modesto, like I was having panic attacks. I'm like, this is only a 30-minute drive, and it's like happening, you know, where there's not even like mountains. And so I just really started focusing on like visualizing what I wanted at the end. I was like, I'm gonna be home safe, I'm gonna get home safe, like you've done this before. Because just like any habit, you know, fear starts becoming a habit. If you're just focused on like, the bad thing is gonna happen, it really does end up crippling you, you know, where like for a while I was putting on my maps like avoiding the highway, because I was like, I'm not gonna get on the highway. And then I was like, this sucks, like I do not want to be living my life like this. It takes me 30 minutes to get home, and now it's gonna take me an hour. Like it just felt like a waste of time. And now I have this like motto that I keep telling myself, like I have no time for fear. Like just, so I really resonated with your story, and thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I know it's helpful. It's helpful to hear other people like speak about it, and to know, because I think half the time we just think, oh, like even anxiety, all that stuff, like, and I feel like with medication, if I have any advice, I'm like, and no shame for medication, but like I was on it for like 10 years just due to chronic pain, and I got off in December, and it was the hardest thing. Like still, I think that's still part of me right now, is like my body figuring out like everything rising to the surface. Like that was a piece of it for me, was taking that out. And it actually, December physically was the hardest, because your body has withdrawals. So all of December was like the most nauseous, worst month ever, which nobody in my life probably really knew, except for like people close to me. But then January was like the clearest mental month ever. But then all of a sudden February hit, and it was just like, it felt like everything came like a roaring like line, you know, like every fear, all the things. But now it kind of feels like, okay, I'm facing them. And so yeah, it's like even the unknown, I'm like, that's totally one of them, is the unknown, because if we haven't seen it before, then we're in a lot of us, we're like in the middle of unknowns, because you all have a unique story and nobody's the same, and so everyone has an unknown in their life right now, whether, you know, so it's just, yeah, it's powerful to identify it and then kind of change the pathway, because right, we make these pathways in our brain to start thinking a certain way, and it's like, oh, it's so good. Yeah.
I think one thing for me is getting more comfortable with the fear of failure. And though I don't think my parents intentionally did it growing up, you know, I tried my best not to fail, and so I didn't try a lot of things. And I'm sure many people have seen Sarah Blakely, the founder, creator of Spanx, and she's a billionaire thanks to her stretchy clothes. We all know. On at formal events. But she's been interviewed many times, but one of the things that she said was that brought her this creative spirit to try these new things was every night at dinner with her dad, he would ask each of the kids, what did you fail at today? And they do like a big celebration where they weren't talking about this or their wins. They're like, what did you try? What did you fall down? What happened? And so she just grew up with that spirit and that motivation with no fear of trying new things. I think that's such a gift.
And even if it's like, okay, even if you switch out the word failure, like didn't go as planned, you know, like okay, maybe it's a failure compared to what you thought it was like supposed to be or what you've seen before, but maybe it wasn't even a failure. Maybe it was just part of your process, and it taught you
forward.
Yeah.
You know, or you may have fallen, but you fell forward.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
get back up, and you know, so just a great concept.
I love the stories of like even like Albert Einstein, things we use every day, like even Harry Potter. Like I don't know if I don't even read Harry Potter, but I know that whoever published it, you know her name? She tried to get her first book published by like a bazillion and nobody wanted to publish it. She ended up self-publishing her first book, and like there's a theme park around her book right now.
Yeah.
Can you imagine like how many people, if they were to be like, oh yeah, you're right, like you don't have to believe, and even like the other thing on my heart is like your kids, like we've had things spoken over our daughter Zoe, and like we've seen her grow out of things, and we've seen her completely like, she didn't say mom till she was 4, like she had a major speech delay and things were spoken over her, but we chose to be like, oh, we're not like, we're gonna choose hope, and we're gonna, because there's gonna be other people that like aren't gonna do that for you, you gotta do it for yourself. And then I'm like looking at her right now at 6 and being like, I'm so glad we didn't just like get terrified at 2 and just live in this place like, oh my gosh, what if like that does happen, or what if she doesn't? We didn't, we grieved, and then we chose like, no, we're gonna hope. And I'm like seeing that, so that's our job, to be like hopeful about things, even in the middle of failures or things not going as planned. Like even if experts are like, oh, you know, watch out, well, I serve a God that's bigger than a lot of the things that terrify me, so that's who I'm listening to above anything. And even hearing you guys talk, like there's just, it's a good versus evil in the world, and I won't take a deep dive into that, but like look at your life, and when you step towards good things, and like you might have some opposition, but like just pay attention, because you're probably on the road to something good and something that the world needs, and there's going to be some opposition because cling to the good.
What I loved about what you said was, you know, something doesn't go as planned, right? But you learn from it, and it shapes who you are.
Yeah.
So that really,
Yes.
hit home.
Learning. I'm like, oh. Yeah, girl. Oh, too. Gabby.
Oh, which one? Go ahead, you can go.
I just think of, I don't want to.
I know, that's why I'm like, let's have it.
I think of you, Jess, and like, just everything that like, I think we've gone through together, like building our businesses, and I think like the biggest thing I would say is like, growth takes time. Like, I think allowing, like, giving yourself grace and like, just being patient and being okay with the journey, because it just takes time. And I think like, there's so many things that will not go our way, and I think like we can get in our own way. I'm really glad you said that, like, you just kind of have to like go for it. And I think with social media too, is I think we look at things and it's like instantaneous. So like we'll see like a time lapse of something, and it's like, oh, it's 10 seconds, and it's like this thing that was nothing into something that was like, oh, immediately beautiful. It's like, well, it's not like that. Like,
No.
it takes so much time. I I think if anything that I've learned this year, like growing flowers and like so much failed and so much did not germinate and grow, and like you realize that like so many things have to go right in order for things to bloom, and I think that's the case with us as humans. It's like there's so much that we have to do and learn in order to like get to where we want to be. But I think being patient and being okay with the process and just taking it as it comes. I think in any scenario, even with like anxiety or I think just like motherhood, it's like you just take it day by day because you just don't know what you're gonna get, what mental state are you gonna be in, like am I gonna be happy with my body today, am I gonna lay in bed all day, I don't know, you know, so it's like you just be patient with yourself, we're only human.
So, I know I don't wanna cry, that's why I was holding back. But, first anyway, I came because I saw Jessica's post, so, you know, so it's my first time, and I'm like, I'm gonna go support her, you know, cause we know each other from church. But really, I'm just really blessed to be here, and, it's my first time learning about this group, but I guess ditto with everything everyone's saying, I just feeling all these different, like, emotions, like, I do wanna just let it cry, cause you know, I think just like the biggest, that topic, you know, fear, you know, there's, I don't know, I think there's, I don't know how many hundreds of known fears, you know, out there, and, for you to just bring that up and to bring it out and to really be able to be in a safe place to share, and, you know, for me, it has also been one of the biggest things is fear of failure, and even, it doesn't sounds contrary, but even fear of success. Because one is, okay, if I succeed, am I gonna be able to keep up with it? Am I gonna be able to like continue to move forward with that, you know, with that responsibility, and then the fear of, well, what if it doesn't succeed, you know? And it's just like this contrary, you know, like this thing that happens in your head, you know, but really is just, you know what, just letting go of those fears, and well, I have, you know, my trust in the Lord as well, and looking back that there is a track record, you know, sometimes it's easy to look at the track record of when it didn't go right, but there is so much out, you know, in your track record that did go right, you know, and that you were able to bounce back and keep moving forward, and so, thank you for sharing your story, and everybody here who has shared, because I can definitely relate to everybody in some way. So,